Hey everyone, welcome back to Tech Talk Central. I'm Nathan, and with me today is Sarah, our tech expert. We are tackling a question that we get all the time. Should I just go with a good old 1080p projector? Or is it finally time to upgrade to 4K?
That's the question everybody is asking. There's so many things to consider, and we're going to unpack all of that for you today.
To help you decide what is best for your home theater, we're doing a deep dive today on two Epson projectors. We have the Home Cinema 3800, that's a 4K projector, and we also have the Epson Pro EX11000, which is 1080p. We'll have links to both of these projectors down in the description. You can check out the latest prices and deals.
We are going to do more than just look at the specs. We want to talk about what the specs mean for you when you're actually sitting down to watch something.
Exactly. So let's start with the Epson Home Cinema 3800. This is the 4K projector. On paper, it had some really cool features. 4K PRO UHD resolution with pixels shifting technology, HDR support, and 3000 lumens of brightness. What does all that mean for the average viewer?
Well, let's start with that 4K PRO UHD with pixel shifting. The first thing to know is that this isn't native 4K like you would see on like a really nice television. It's a technology where the projector is really quickly shifting the pixels on the screen, and it creates the illusion of a higher resolution.
So it's trying to get you close to 4K without that super high price tag.
Yeah, exactly. And people in the reviews seem to be impressed with it. Even people who are used to watching native 4K say that it looks really crisp and clear.
That is really interesting. I am curious about those technical limitations, though. Can you really tell that it's not true 4K?
That's a good question. I think for most people watching at normal distances, it's probably going to be pretty subtle. If you are a videophile, you know, if you have a really big screen and you're really looking for those details, you might notice that it's a little softer than native 4K.
Okay, so it might not be for everybody, but for a lot of people who just want to get a little closer to 4K without paying that huge price, it might be a really good option. Now, how about that 3000 lumens of brightness? Is that enough to give you a really good picture? Especially if you have any lights on in the room?
3000 lumens is a good starting point for a projector. It's definitely bright enough if you can control the light in the room a little bit. If you're going to have a lot of lights on, you know, maybe a living room, you might want to look for something a little brighter.
So blackout curtains are still a good idea.
Oh, for sure.
Here.
If you really want to get that high quality image, it makes a big difference. And another thing to think about is HDR content, which is getting more and more popular. To really get the benefit of HDR, you know, the brighter highlights and the wider range of colors, it really helps to have a projector that can put out a lot of light.
That makes a lot of sense. So this might be a great option if you have a dedicated home theater space. But if you're in a living room or a multi-purpose room and you're fighting the sunlight, this one might not be the best. Before we move on to the 1080p option, I did want to ask about something I noticed on the spec sheet. The Home Cinema 3800 has built-in speakers and Bluetooth. This is something that people really use.
You know, I think it's a nice bonus. For people who are just doing casual viewing, the speakers aren't going to be amazing. They aren't going to replace a good surround sound system, but they're fine for just watching a TV show or something. And the Bluetooth is nice if you want to connect your phone or a tablet or something, so you can easily play music.
It's not a game changer,
Yeah.
but it's a nice little bonus. Let's move on to the Epson Pro EX11000. This is our 1080p projector. This one has 4600 lumens. That's a lot brighter than the 3800.
Yeah, a lot brighter. That's one of the best things about this projector. It is so bright, you can even watch it during the day, even if you have some lights on.
So I'm imagining watching a football game with my friends on a Sunday. Would this be a good projector for that? Could we watch it with the lights on? Would it look washed out?
This would be perfect for that. It's actually a really popular projector for offices and schools because it's so bright.
Yeah.
And it can handle pretty much any lighting situation. The other really cool thing about this one is that it uses lasers.
Lasers. What does that mean for the average person?
Well, for one, it means that it lasts a really long time, like up to 20,000 hours.
No.
And you don't have to replace the bulb. Also, lasers don't really lose their brightness over time like a regular bulb does.
That's amazing. No more scrambling to find a replacement bulb. Right in the middle of the movie. And for streamers out there, the EX11000 has a lot of different ways to connect. It has screen mirroring, 2 HDMI ports. It even has a USB port, so you can power your streaming stick.
And people in the reviews seem to really like the image quality. They say that the colors are vivid, and the whites are really clear, even when the lights are on.
It sounds like this is a really good option for people who don't have a dedicated home theater room. But if you're somebody who really cares about resolution, maybe 4K is still worth it.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So it really comes down to this: resolution or brightness. What's more important?
And a lot of people think that more pixels automatically means a better picture. But as we've been talking about, there's a lot more to it than that, especially when you think about things like ambient light and the kind of content you're watching.
Exactly. So let's dig a little deeper into this 4K versus 1080p thing. One of the first things to think about is viewing distance.
How does that affect things? Why is viewing distance so important?
Well, think about it this way. If you're sitting really close to the screen, especially if it's a big screen, you can see the individual pixels. In that case, 4K is going to make a big difference. Because it has a higher pixel density, you'll see a lot more detail. But if you're sitting farther away, those pixels start to blend together. And you can't really tell the difference between 4K and 1080p.
So if you have a small room, or you just like to sit close to the screen, 4K is probably worth it. But you have a big living room, and you're usually sitting on the couch, way back from the projector. 1080p might be just fine.
Exactly. And then the other thing is screen size. Obviously, a bigger screen is going to show off the 4K resolution better because you have more space for all those pixels. But on a small screen, you're not really going to see much of a difference.
So if you're going with a 120-inch screen, 4K is going to be amazing. If you're just going with like an 80-inch screen, it's probably not going to be a huge difference.
And it's not just about seeing the pixels. 4K just gives you a more immersive experience. It has a lot more detail, more depth in the image, especially on a bigger screen.
So with 4K, you really feel like you're in the movie.
Exactly. But like we were talking about before, resolution is just one piece of the puzzle. Brightness, contrast, color accuracy, all of those things are important too. And that's where the EX11000, our 1080p projector, really shines. It might not be 4K, but it's super bright. And it has that laser light source.
So we've talked about viewing distance and screen size. What about content? Does that make a difference?
Yeah, for sure. If you're a big movie person and you want to watch all the new releases in the best quality possible, 4K is probably going to be a better choice for you.
Yeah.
Especially if you're watching something that was actually filmed in 4K. You're seeing it the way the director intended.
But if you're more of a casual watcher,
yeah,
maybe you watch some TV shows, you watch some sporting events, maybe you watch some YouTube, 1080p is probably going to be fine.
Right. Now, what about gaming? A lot of gamers really want the best picture possible.
Does 4K make a difference for gaming?
It can, especially if you're playing a game that's designed for 4K. Everything just looks a lot better. The details are sharper. It's a more immersive experience.
So 4K is probably good for gamers then.
Yeah, but there's one thing to keep in mind. Sometimes that pixel shifting technology that we were talking about, it can cause a little bit of lag. And that can be a problem for gamers, especially if you're playing a really fast-paced game.
So if you're a serious gamer,
yeah,
that little bit of lag could be a deal breaker.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to think about what you're going to be using the projector for. What are your priorities? There's no one right answer for everybody.
You have to find the right balance for you, based on how you're going to be using it. We've talked about a lot. Viewing distance, screen size, the content you're watching, even gaming. There's a lot to think about when you're choosing a projector.
There really is. And we can't forget about budget.
Right. What's the price difference between these two?
So right now, the Epson Home Cinema 3800, that's our 4K one, is going for about $1,700. And the Epson Pro EX11000, the 1080p one, that one's about $1,200.
Okay, so there's a pretty big difference there. $500 is a lot of money.
It is. And I think that really highlights those trade-offs that we were talking about. Do you want to spend more to get that higher resolution, or do you want to save some money and get something that's super bright?
So to wrap things up, what are the big things that people should keep in mind?
I think the most important thing is to think about what you're going to be using the projector for if you're a movie buff.
Yeah.
And you really want to get the best picture quality possible. And you have a dedicated home theater room. You know you can control the light. Then the Epson Home Cinema 3800 with the 4K resolution. That might be the one to go with.
Especially if you're watching 4K content.
Exactly. You want to be able to see all those pixels. But if you're more of a casual viewer and you don't always have perfect lighting, the Epson Pro EX11000 might be a better choice. It's super bright and it has that laser light source. So you know you're going to get a good picture no matter what you're watching.
And you don't have to worry about replacing the bulb.
That's a big plus.
Especially if you use your projector a lot.
And don't forget, even though it's only 1080p, it still has really great picture quality, especially if you have a smaller screen. Or you're sitting farther away, you probably won't even be able to tell the difference.
And it's less expensive.
So that's something to consider too.
So it really all comes down to your personal preferences and how you're going to be using it.
Exactly.
Well, that about wraps it up for our deep dive. 4K versus 1080p projectors. Hopefully this has helped you decide what's right for you.
And remember, technology is always changing. What's cutting edge today is going to be old news tomorrow. Just find what works best for you right now.
To check out the latest prices and deals on the Epson Home Cinema 3800 and the Epson Pro EX 11000, be sure to check out the links in the description below. And while you're down there, be sure to subscribe to Tech Talk Central for more in-depth tech reviews. Until next time, happy viewing.